in a land where cacti outnumber cell towers and the horizon stretches further than a fiber optic cable, it's time for Valley's Bits, Bytes and Banter, the podcast that looks a bit behind the scenes of a broadband provider, takes a big bite out of the tech world, and serves up a healthy dose of banter with people in our community. And now, without further ado, here's your host, Bob Dahlstrom.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Valley's Bits, Bytes, and Banter, the podcast I do along with my co-host and partner in crime, Ralph Score. Ralph, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
Great. And remind everybody, first of all, thank you for listening to our podcast. And you can download and listen to episodes pretty much anywhere you get podcasts. But we host them on Podbean. It's a free app. Or go to podbean.com. Search Valley's Bits, Valley with an apostrophe S, and you'll find all the episodes there. And we encourage you to download, share, review, and have a great time listening to it. A lot of great guests and good information, just kind of like today.
And subscribe.
And please subscribe to that. And you can not only find them there, you can find them on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify.
YouTube.
You can get them on YouTube. You can get them on our website, vtc.net/blog. And now at GilaValleyCentral.net, they have a podcast website for local podcasts, and there we are.
We're listed
on their page there. So go check it out, guys.
That's right.
Thanks for tuning in. We're excited about today's episode, as we are about every episode we do, because the guests we have are great.
Yeah. And, of course, it's getting a little hot in Arizona right now.
Yeah, it is right now.
We're starting to get up there a little bit.
We're skipping over spring this year, it looks like, and heading right to summer.
Yeah, it's like I went right from having the heater on to turning the air conditioners on.
That's
like, that's Arizona. You get the heater on in the vehicle in the morning, and then you can see AC in the afternoon. So.
I was going to say, it's all about layering in the day for Arizona because we have 40 degree, 50 degree, and then some 40 degree swings in a day.
It's a 40 degree swing, right, Ed? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
so.
Year before last, we had a 105 degree afternoon and a 39 degree morning.
It's not common, but it's not unusual.
I put on my snowmobile suit in the morning. and then my swimming trunks in the afternoon.
Yeah, I was going to say, and you're out swimming outside.
It's just a side note, by the way, those swings is what makes Chile work in southern Arizona.
It's also what makes the wine work out here.
It is.
That might give you a little hint of who our special guest is today.
That's right.
Yeah, I like that. We're talking today.
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
Well, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about the Foundation for Rural Service today to get it going. They're known as the FRS. And, of course, they work hand in hand with the NTCA, which is the Rural Broadband Association. We're members of the Rural Broadband Association.
Right.
And it's really an important information because the FRS, they got a vital interest in helping rural communities grow and thrive. That's their big focus, right?
Yeah, across the country.
Yeah, the key to accomplishing the goal with their mission is a lot of various programs. The annual Washington Youth Tour that's getting ready to come up. And we
participate in that, but it is put on by the FRS.
Yep. And then they also do a lot of scholarships the same way that Valley does every year.
They do.
And, of course, they engage rural youth and provide resources for rural communities. And they also educate consumers and policymakers about about improving the quality of life in America by advancing the understanding of what happens in a rural community, right, as opposed to urban. A lot of people, don't realize there's a lot of different issues when you live outside of a city, that you don't get within a metro area.
Right. And they champion and promote the rural communities, and they're the backbone of our country. Let's be honest. They really are.
Well, it's like small business.
Yeah.
Small business is the backbone of business in this country, right?
Absolutely.
Well, so part of their ongoing commitment to rural communities across the country, they offer aid to communities served by members like us, and they do it through a community grant program that they do. And these grants, they're designed to provide a support for a variety of local efforts to build and sustain high quality of life in rural America. And the applications for the grants are accepted each spring. And the grants range from $250 to $5,000 and there's 4 categories, I think. But you can actually find those applications on our website when they become available. If you go to www.vtc.net/FRS-grant-program, and when those applications come up, they're available there. And every November they award these grants out to people.
Yeah, read up on the eligibility requirements and what it takes to fill it out, and if you live in a rural community, there's a big one right there.
They do.
So,
They do about $170,000 a year in community grants.
yeah,
across
they do
the
a lot.
country, which
They
is
do a lot of
really
good,
pretty good stuff.
A lot of great stuff,
Yeah,
and
so-
we do a lot of things, and a lot of what they do is behind the scenes. So it's nice to
It is.
It's nice to call them out and say these guys are big champions.
Yeah, they are.
for rural communities
They are.
nationwide.
Yeah, and they do a lot, with the youth, which is really important.
Yes, they do.
So
Yes,
it's
they
really
do.
Big, so. Well, since it's hot out there, and we're going to talk a little bit about water today, right? I got some water trivia for you that you may not.
Water trivia.
Yeah, this is so. The first thing is about Earth and water. Of course, water covers 70% of the Earth's surface, right? And did you know that there's the same amount of water on Earth now as there was when the Earth was formed, basically? And 7% of all fresh water on the Earth is trapped in glaciers. So,
7% of it.
yeah, so if we could just get those glaciers closer.
Oh, we need to get them down here.
And
How do we do that, Ralph?
water is the only substance found naturally in three forms, right? Solids, right? Ice,
Right.
liquid, and water, and gas is steam or water vapor. But here's something a lot of people don't know, that water actually regulates the Earth's temperature. And people don't know this, right? And one way it does this is through something known as heat capacity, because water can absorb a large amount of heat energy before its temperature rises significantly.
Right.
And then it releases heat very slowly when cooling. So this helps to moderate temperature extremes, especially in coastal regions.
Oh, okay.
Right. And now let's talk about water in your own body, right? So two-thirds of
From there to the water in your bodies.
the body of water, right? It says so 2/3 of the human body is made of water,
Right.
75% of your brain is made of water. So I wonder about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's a
and
new
maybe not
meaning
mine.
instead of airhead?
Yeah, waterhead, yeah.
Water.
balloon head, and then
That's right.
And then human blood is 83% water, and human bones contain 25% water, right? And then
Interesting. I did not know all that.
Yeah, last two things is water can dissolve more substances than any other liquid, including sulfuric acid, and the freezing point of water lowers as the amount of salt dissolved in it increases.
Really?
And that's why your seawater doesn't freeze.
Right. Okay. Now you've given everybody all kinds of things to think about.
Way more
when it comes
information
to
than they
water.
ever wanted, right? And that's our spurious facts for then. You got some stuff too.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out one. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Did you know Google rents goats to maintain their lawn at their headquarters
I need one of their goats.
in Mountain View,
I-
California?
I need one of their goats to maintain my lawn.
They have 200 goats that they rent, and they're herded by a border collie named Jen.
Oh, I have a wife
How
named Jen.
specific? How specific is that?
Yeah, I could get Jen.
So if you see at the top of a Google, who got my goat?
Yeah,
It may be Jen.
that's right. That's right. I'll have to let Jen know that. It's like,
Yeah,
honey,
I thought that was interesting.
we're gonna get a goat from Google, and you're gonna be the border collie. She's gonna love that.
Yeah, can you imagine that showing
Yeah.
up there? And anyways, that's how they naturally take care of their lawn at their massive headquarters in Mountain View,
Well,
California.
that makes a lot
their
of sense.
campus.
I don't think the goats would like my yard right now. It's mostly like yellow, and there's a lot of pigweed they can eat from last year.
There you go. But in order to grow that grass, what do they need? They need lots of water.
Water,
We're going
yeah,
to talk a little bit about water with our special guest, our returning special guest, right after this quick break, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey, are you playing Fortnite?
Yeah.
Let's go, man. I'm gonna beat you so bad.
You know I could go pro if I wanted to. You do not stand a chance. Besides, we always just play against each other.
Yeah, that's true.
We need to find more people to play with.
Hey, Valley Telecom has the Fiber Gaming Network, an online community where we can compete in tournaments and win real prizes, or just meet new gamers and participate in casual game nights.
Whoa, that's so cool. But how much does it cost?
It's actually free. Valley Telecom is providing this to their community at no charge. We just go to vtc.net/gaming and sign up.
Wow, that's so awesome. Now I can show everyone I'm the best.
Get in the game with a fiber gaming network powered by Valley Telecom. Go to vtc.net/gaming to sign up today.
Welcome back to Valley's Bits, Bytes, and Banter. I'm your host, Bob Dahlstrom, along with my co-host, Ralph Score, and Josh and Jacob Encinas. Thank you for that, for talking about Fiber Gaming Network. That is one thing we provide, and we don't talk enough about it, I think, to let people know. But it is a free service we offer to everybody. If you love to online game, and a lot of people love the thing about the community and gaming with other people online and just the fun you can have and the competitive spirit of it. Fiber Gaming Network is that place,
And it's
free.
free.
Yes. You can go to vtc.net/gaming to learn more about it. Or if you want to register, go straight to fibergamingnetwork.com.
Yep.
Say you want to sign up, register via your ISP, Internet Service Provider. Find us in the list, Valley Telecom Group, and off you go. And they hold tournaments every week. Some are very competitive, like on the weekends for prizes. They do community nights throughout the weekdays at night, and also trivia and thing. Have a lot of fun, a lot of prizes, and really great prizes. And again, it's all for free. You just need to have a way to access the games and have the games, and off you go.
Yep.
Have fun. Guys, it's time to introduce our special guest, and I'm pretty excited. And it's somebody we had on before, and it's great to have him back. And remind everybody, he is on the forefront of Chile seed genetics, has been for at least 5 decades, if not longer.
The Godfather of Chile.
That's right. 4th-generation farmer and the founder of Curry Seed and Chili Company. And today, if you didn't know, his seeds account for over 95% of the commercially grown chili crops nationwide. Yeah. And also has worldwide influence on the chilies. And like Ralph said, the Godfather of Chile. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ed Curry. Ed, welcome back.
Thank you. You guys are way too kind.
Yeah. Well, we love having you on. I mean, we spent the first time we had you on was been quite a few episodes. I mean, we've been doing this for just about a year, and it was when we first started towards the 6th episode.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about Chile's. Fascinating episode, guys. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. You'll learn a lot. And today we're going to kind of tilt that a little bit, Ed, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Because, and one of the topics we want to talk about is, obviously, you have to grow chilies. You need water to do it. And the desert Southwest that we live in, it can provide certain unique challenges, right, with availability of water. So I want to get started is, how do you provide efficient water practices for your crops? Because you have a tremendous variety of chilies that you are raising, you're growing, testing, and you need water to do that. So, I mean, how much of a challenge has that been for you over the years to figure that out?
Bob, water affects us in several different ways. Number one, you got to have it to grow.
Right.
Just as I got a kick out of your deal about comes in 3 forms and never leaves the earth and it's never changed. And I've been on the Governor's Water Council.
It just moves around.
It moves around. I gave that same talk many times at the beginning of the talk, saying, hey, water's interesting in that it just changes forms, and the total volume of water on planet Earth never changes. So, to the point of Chile. Chile takes about 2.5 acre-feet of water under a drip irrigation system, maybe a little bit more under a pivot irrigation. Under flood irrigation, we were spending 5 acre-feet to grow it. So we've cut that in half through years of trial and error. We've had pivots now since my first pivot was 1978.
Wow.
So that would be the beginning, and then from there, my first drip irrigation was 1990. I actually experimented with a neighbor in 1983, and I seen tremendous results, but it wasn't my crop. He had put some drip in. I now actually own the farm he was on then. And in doing that, I could see, holy cow, it number one, under the drip, it was warmer. It didn't cool it like the overhead sprinkler.
Right.
I could see the chili was up. It was the fastest I'd ever seen chili come up.
So the water temperature itself has something to do with it?
It certainly can. Plus, you don't have the air conditioning effect of the sprinkler over the top.
Right.
So chili is, it's not uncommon for us to have a chili crop planted 25 days before we see anything up on a cold spring.
Wow.
And especially under pivot irrigation. But all that being said, different methods of irrigation not only change how much water we use, but change how healthy the crop is.
Wow. Under
pivot irrigation, we tend to have a little more trouble with Phytophthora and with capsicum. It's a water mold that literally can wipe us out, and it's a problem around the world.
Wow.
It's not just here. It also affects watermelons, pumpkins, squash of all kinds. Many, many vegetables are affected by it. There's many categories of Phytophthora besides Capsicum, and alfalfa can get a Phytophthora, but it's of a different family. So God made this where it's all balanced, right? I mean, everything's balanced. And what we have learned is the pivot is much better irrigation than flood irrigation. And we actually had less problem with Phytophthora than we did when we flooded. And one of the interesting things is these spores, the Phytophthora spores, move around in the water. Years ago when we had pump backs, we called them return systems that our wastewater would run down. Mm-hmm. It was a piece of efficiency, really. We would pump it back to the top and reuse it. But
you were pumping the spores.
We were moving those Phytophthora spores around. And finally, we spread it all over the farm and not realizing it. I mean, we caught on fairly quick, but not quick enough.
Yeah, how come this one over here has now got it?
Exactly. Yeah. So then when we went to pivot irrigation, well, we wasn't moving the water around. We didn't have near as much runoff, but we still had some live moisture on top. And then when we would get a flood, a rain event, especially a monsoonal type event of 1 or 2 inches, really quick, really hard, then the same thing as the pump back irrigation,
push it all through,
flood irrigation. Then we moved them around again.
All over.
All over. And literally the best way I can describe that, it would be like a fire, a wheat field burning, and you could follow the way the wind blows. Well, that's the way those spores move, too.
Wow.
Certain, anything above 55 degrees in temperature, the right moisture, live
grow
moisture,
conditions,
and winds, then it moved literally like a firewood. So then when we went to drip irrigation, and this is not only myself, this is in New Mexico as well, and Mexico, really worldwide now, but in the regions I deal in the most, which is Chihuahua and here, a little bit on the west coast, down around Las Mochas and on up to Obregon, those areas. Drip irrigation is almost the only form of irrigation used today. Now, I have some growers that still use in West Texas, still use quite a bit of sprinkler irrigation, but even there's a huge push to drip. It doesn't save a lot more water than pivot irrigation, but yet it does. There's just extenuating circumstances. So little by little, we've been moving our irrigation systems to drip. We put in quite a few more acres again this year. Last year each year we put in a few more acres.
So does that also reduce the disease capability because it's getting down to the root quicker?
Thank you, Ralph. That's exactly right. That's part of where I was going. Now, I'm going to throw out another point of the opposite. So we get powdery mildew on the leaves in the fall, and it can absolutely desiccate a field. It'll just drop all the leaves, defoliate it. The pivot washes that powdery mildew off. Drip does not.
Right.
So we tend to get that worse in the drip by a lot.
Right.
The pivot, we just don't hardly ever see it. So, there's...
How do you balance that?
Exactly. It's a trial. Now, typically, the powdery mildew is not near as...
You think it's better when in drier conditions? Or is that
yes,
something
powdery
that affects
mildew likes a little humidity, likes humid nights, typically kind of our late monsoon era when the humidity and even in the desert finally gets to 30, 35%. That's when we see it, when it's kind of muggy.
Yeah.
Now, folks in Mississippi would laugh at that, but
they totally would. For us, that's
35%. Yeah.
But for us, that's when we start to see that. Right. So I only say that to lay out the different venues of how water application can change. The biggest key right now in a closed groundwater basin is obvious. The drip is the ultimate.
Yeah.
But it really, I don't want to put misinformation out here. It really doesn't save a lot of water over the sprinkler. And you know, the first thing is going to pop in your head, well, how could it not? You don't have.
They think of evaporation.
You don't. You think of evaporation. Exactly. Well, the reason is because on the drip irrigation, sometimes getting that water to the top to germinate and
takes
we'll
more.
actually push some down.
Right.
We'll lose it to the depths rather than it's kind of the opposite of that. So in the end, there's very little difference in total water consumption between the drip and the pivot. Now, that's been my experience. Now, Senator Tim Dunn and Representative Gail Griffin 2 years ago passed a bill, maybe 3 now, that helped the whole state of Arizona put in some, it's called a water efficiency program. And the low-hanging fruit in all of Arizona, the whole Southwest, is how do we apply water in agriculture? Obviously, we need agriculture.
Right.
I call it the symbiotic relationship. Right now at the Capitol, there's a lot of discussion going on about legislation and water and how we do this. And then I think I would be amiss not to mention that Taiwan Semiconductor just 3 weeks it's a month this week, came out with an announcement in the Arizona Republic that they were going to put $165 billion in Phoenix area for more plants for semiconductors. So with that being said, it takes water.
Yeah.
Right.
$165 billion, if you just take a percentage, it's going to add at least another, I don't even know the number, 500,000 people to the area.
Right.
By the time you count families and kids, and that's
For that
a guess.
size of a facility.
I don't want anybody to say I've got the facts on that.
Right.
I'm just saying
It's the water use that's going to
it's
come out of that
going to bring
increase.
more people.
Yeah.
It will grow the Phoenix area, and they're just one of many.
Yeah.
So in all of that, water down the Colorado.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of pushback on this, but yet I have some pretty reasonable people at the Capitol that do agree with me that eventually, if we give this number, 20% of the Colorado goes for cities, 80% goes for agriculture. Well, we need agriculture. Nobody here disagrees with that.
Right.
No.
Yuma and the Imperial Valley provide
A lot.
some for 4.5
Yeah.
months out of the year. They provide 90% of the vegetables in the U.S.
Yeah.
Right.
That's important.
Yeah.
We've got to feed
It
that.
is.
So how do we balance this? Because, guys, water is going to become more and more and more valuable. Many of us have heard the statement, well, water will be worth more than
Gold. Yeah.
Or, and technically, compared to oil right now, you buy a bottle of water, you pay more than you do for gas
Yeah.
right now. That's just in today's world. Now that
Right.
counts freight and bottling
Yeah.
and a lot of other things.
Well, it's like the old adage, it's like, was it whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over?
There you go, Ralph. That's, and in this case, that is so true. And the battle at the Capitol, being on the governor's committee and council, we came together with a bill. We announced it because, particularly right now, Republicans are in charge. That bill didn't go anywhere. It didn't last year. It's a frustrating point of our system that we are so divided that we can't come together and sit down and really talk.
Find a chord.
And particularly Ms. Griffin will, and I love Gail. I get along with Gail fine, but she kept saying, well, we met 112 times last year. That's something to be ashamed of, not to be proud of.
That's an incredible amount of times. One every 3 days almost.
Yeah.
It was a long time, and we started it again this year. They're met this morning. But my point is, if it takes 112 meetings and you still didn't get together, somebody's not coming to the middle.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming either side. I'm just saying that we're not coming to the middle.
Right.
You should be
Right.
ashamed of 112 meetings,
Right.
not proud of that fact.
Right.
That's not a good fact to throw out there. It only shows how broken we are as a society. I've never been in politics till being appointed November of 23. It's been very humbling. It's been very interesting. I've learned so much about how we deal with each other politically and political parties, and how that typically there will be a party that this is the frustrating part that I see. If I ran for, let's say I ran for the House and I won, but I didn't go along with my fellow partyman, whichever party it was, I'm not going to get a committee position.
All right.
I'm not going to be heard.
You're going to be an
I'm going to be
outcast.
shoved. I'm going to be an outcast.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ralph. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so, I'm honored to be able to do this, because what I see is how do we fix our brokenness in society? We are only magnifying more and more and more how broken we are as a society. And I don't mean that negative, but we all rush to the Republican side, then the Republicans do some things, and then 4 years later we run to the Democrat.
It's the
and
pendulum.
And then now
Yeah.
with the executive orders, well, this president does this and this president does this. I'm not trying to be political, but yet I am.
Right.
I'm saying we've lost the days of coming and sitting down, Ronald Reagan, Tip O'Neill.
Yeah.
Sitting down and talking things out.
A compromise.
A compromise.
Yeah,
And a
right.
reasonable compromise, rather than, and I'm often challenged on this, but it's games.
Yeah.
It's big games. And often one side will know that they're not going to do what they're saying.
Yeah.
But they'll put it out there as it's called positioning. And so in this water bill, let's get back to water. So how do we resolve Arizona? You got Taiwan Semiconductor, you got many, many other companies on both sides of Phoenix. And it's, I'll use the word leaking. It's leaking, it's spreading down to the Tucson area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now let's talk about that. So for years, we ran the CAP into the basin in Tucson. That basin is very healthy today because of
Yeah.
that. But the day will come that the CAP is all used. There's certain agreements that won't 100%, but
Yeah.
Right.
it will be more used in the Phoenix area. I liken it to throwing a rock in a pond. And
The ripples.
The ripples. So the pond is Phoenix. The center of the pond is Phoenix. You throw the rock, and the ripples come to rural Arizona and all parts of Arizona. That's why it's going to be so important to augment the Colorado with better irrigation methods. And there's salt issues, there's a lot of issues. We had to figure it out down here, and we did, because our water was deep and it was expensive to pump. If we were going to farm, we had to figure it out. In the Colorado basin, or the basin that irrigates from the Colorado, that water's been virtually free, with the exception of distribution, which has some costs. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's free, but it's not like what we pay
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So it has brought a lot of lack of respect for what water really is.
Yeah.
So
I think people take it for granted.
yes,
you
it's
know?
taken for granted. So therefore, some areas the irrigation uses, it's still flood. It's what they did thousands of years ago. It's still flood, and we know we can cut that in half with sprinkler irrigation, drip irrigation. I even get pushback from my good friends at the university. Well, but there's salt issues. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
The easiest augmentation is how to cut the water usage in half on the 80% of the Colorado that's used for irrigation, which we all agree we need. Nobody's saying we don't need agriculture, but we got to figure out how to use it wisely.
Yeah.
We were forced to on our end of the state. So by God's grace, Governor Hobbs appointed me. I'm the only real farmer on the board.
And
there's a lot of us on the board.
thank goodness you're on the board.
To represent the
thank you.
local farmers. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun, and if we need to break, you say so. But we'll go into the next segment and cover a little bit more of how I think we can get there. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I am saying it's pretty clear that those of us that have paid more per acre foot of water, and in our case, it wasn't for the water, it was for the pumping cost.
Right.
Because of doing that, we respect water much differently than the off the river. At the end of the day, water's water.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether it's surface water or groundwater, it's water.
It's just how you get it.
What will it will take to make semiconductors? Still water. They don't care if it's ground. They don't care if it's surface.
Yeah.
So there's a big influence of our system is bifurcated. My good friend, the attorney, Patrick Sigel at SRP, he helped me with this, and that our system is bifurcated, and that was decided back in 1951 and 52, Cheatham versus somebody else, and I can't forget the other name, but the bottom line is there was a lawsuit. They lost the first year. The second year they come back. They gave a different ruling for groundwater in Arizona. And many states have this. We're not unique to that. But we are unique that we're the last state in this union to really come up with some serious water laws. If we do not figure this out, guys, I'm pausing to make a point. If we do not figure this out, our great-grandchildren,
There won't be anything there.
it's going to be very different for them.
Yeah.
I believe there'll be some here,
Yeah.
but I believe it'll be much different. So let's go for the easy augmentation first. Good irrigation system across the whole deal. We'll figure out ways to deal with the salt. But there's many things that can be done from augmentation of irrigation itself. Now, desalinization. You know where the price of water is going to land?
Oh my gosh.
It's going to land at whatever it costs to desalinize water.
Right.
Not counting pumping it from the ocean to wherever after you desalinize it. Round numbers, $2,000 an acre foot.
Yeah.
That's a tremendous increase.
Wow.
I throw that out there to make everybody realize that the James Eklund, and I may not pronounce his last name right, but I text back and forth with James Sums. He's head of the Colorado way up in Denver, and he's an attorney, very savvy on this. I was at a meeting with James, and we're eating lunch, and he says, "What do you think is the highest paid per acre foot water that I've dealt with?" I'm bouncing around $300, $400, $500. He looked at me kind of quiet. He said, "Ed, $80,000 an acre foot." There's a place in Colorado where they bored through a mountain to get a little town water. That's 25 cents a gallon to have running water.
Right.
They're not watering many yards with that.
Yeah, I bet.
Guarantee.
But I thank James for doing that because it brought me to a reality. The reality is there's the top that he knows right today, down to no charge at all on the lower Colorado. And ironically, the upper Colorado is where it all comes from.
Right.
And the lower Colorado is where it's all
turn
used.
around and run it.
Yeah. They could just get it to run backwards.
That's right.
But you're going to ask, well, what does that have to do with Cochise County, and how does that affect us?
Well, that is a good question, and I would like to cover that after we take a short break. I think that's what we really want to start getting into now is locally.
Yeah.
I know it's been a big topic. One of the reasons you're involved at the levels you are. So I want to get into that if we can. Take a short break. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Valley's Bits, Bytes, and Banters. Stick around and listen to the rest of this. You're going to love it.
The endless options for streaming movies, shows, and sports can be overwhelming. Valley Telecom is here to help with Stream Now, your ultimate online reference for all things streaming. Whether you're a binge watcher or just looking for a quick episode to enjoy, we've got you covered. Discover recommendations, compare platforms, and find the best content for your favorite streaming devices. Stream Now makes it simple to get the most out of your streaming experience. Enjoy the journey of discovering your next favorite show, movie, or live event all in one place. The best part is it's free to use. Unlock the door to endless viewing possibilities by going to gostreamnow.com/VTC today.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Valley's Bits, Bytes, and Banter. I'm your host, Bob Dahlstrom, along with my co-host and partner in crime, Ralph Score. And remind everybody, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions or ideas, or you just want to email us and say hi, you can do it at podcast@teamvtg.net. And before the break, we were talking with our special guest here today, Ed Curry. And Ed, we've had you on before. We were talking about the water issues, and you were talking about them. I mean, hopefully everybody understands now, or at least better understands the issue that dealing with statewide, as far as agriculture is such a huge industry in Arizona and very important nationwide.
Yeah.
But now, you guys, what started all this, I think, is, and we've talked about it being a closed water basin.
Yeah.
And what that means and how that affects Cochise County and locally, especially the other industries that have moved into the area, sharing that water. And what are you seeing in problems with there at Cochise County and how you guys are addressing them? Because obviously that's part of the reason, domino effect, right? Part of the reason you were involved at the level you are and been asked to be involved in the state level, and hoping to share that for everyone.
So let me go to the first, the importance of agriculture. $31 billion Arizona agriculture a year. So it's huge to our economy.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's huge to our eating, our dairy products, our vegetable products from Yuma. My deal's kind of simple, but I mean small. But even to the chili industry, we're significant.
I can't live without salsa.
There you go.
That's exactly right.
So, how does it affect here? That's when I used in the previous segment. I used the rock in the middle of the pond and the ripples.
Right.
So what happens in Phoenix will eventually, in that surrounding area, will eventually use enough water to drive the cost of water back to that $2,000 an acre foot, at least. Whatever it costs to desal, that's going to be the augmentation factor. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not the only one that thinks this, that will be where it ends. Is it'll it's like you're filling your bathtub. There's a point where it runs over, but there's a balance of where it's all level. Well, that the same on the cost of water. It's going to be leveled out wherever augmentation costs, and that's why I talked about. Thank goodness for Representative Griffin and Tim Dunn and our governor signing that to put that into play so that we have ways to help. So how does that affect Cochise County? We're overdrafting about a little over 100,000 acre feet a year. Now here's the numbers, roughly, according to Department of Water. How accurate this is, I don't know. But this is their numbers. I'm going to give them pretty good credit. We're 25% recharge. We're 75% overdraft.
Wow.
But we know that in the past history, in the 80s, agriculture had a tough time. And a lot of farmers went broke. A lot of area where Riverview is now, a lot of that wasn't farmed. We actually seen, even according to Arizona Department of Water statistics, the water level started coming back up. So we know it's not impossible. Somewhere we got to come to a balance of, so I'm going to play with some numbers for you, okay? So 25% recharge through the mountain valleys and the canyons and stuff. If we can augment that through some recharge wells, which in the Del City, Texas area, by the way, they have held that water aquifer for many years now with some recharge wells where they actually run the runoff from the mountains right back in the ground. And the city of El Paso owns that now and is getting that water. So I'm giving you real examples of how that really worked. If we can do this, and just the other day, Tuesday, Mr. Klump offered his ranch to Philip to use for some recharge wells and recharge basins. It was very good of him. He's offered that every meeting, and I hope I'm not insulting him by bringing this, but I think it's an honor to him. He was offering that as help.
Right.
So let's move the numbers. Let's say that now we move it from 25% recharge to 35%, just 10%. Then, as farmers, we cut back 15%, 20%. You see where I'm going? The numbers come together very quickly.
You get the balance.
If the overdraft is 75, but now we reduce it to 60, and the recharge was 25, and now we move it to 35, now let's play with those numbers a little more. Through that type of augmentation, then we come to 40%, and then maybe we do 25%. And the governor's bill, the bill we helped build, that's what we asked for. Actually, we asked for 40% over 40 years. And right now, some of the goals for the AMA, we've Department of Water has come out. Just Tuesday, we announced that possibly 50% over 50 years. A lot of people panic, including the Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau says, oh, no, we can't do that. That'll run us out. Well, technology will help. We have corn varieties right today that use way less much water than they did several years ago. So with genetics, with soil amendments that help the soil hold it. I mean, there's a lot, and some of this gets scoffed at by my fellow farmers. But if you gain 5% here, 10% there, pretty soon it all adds up to, down the road, is not our medical world much different than it was? I particularly have 2 new hips. I don't mind saying that on this podcast. And that was, 5-6 years ago in my early 60s.
Right.
Had we not had the progress in medicine, modern medicine, I would be done, guys. I literally got to where I couldn't even ride the four-wheeler to check fields without sitting sideways. So because of modern technology, hey, I'm walking, hiking, running a little bit, as I told you.
Right.
Jumping jacks,
You were showing us the jumping jacks before the podcast.
So
That's
why,
right.
So why can't we do that with water too?
Thank you, Ralph. It will come. And we can't be so close-minded that we don't look down the road to the future. The dairy folks have been very supportive of being, I'm not saying anything I shouldn't. You will see Mr. Fair, who owns the dairy, say on one of our podcasts from the Lincoln Institute, he said, in 40, 50 years, we'll be using 40, 50% less water and making the same crop. He's very wise. He's right on that. And that's where we've got to have a vision to look down the road to how do we do this with less. When we do that, then Cochise County can be sustainable for your great-grandchildren, yours, and mine.
Even with a closed basin.
Even with a closed basin, because we managed it. If we didn't know what we know about 1990 and the early years after the Carter administration and ag took so many spills and financially that many went broke. And I'm not blaming Mr. Carter. He's a great man, great Christian man. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying politics, sometimes we have some things happen that change. That particular window, today we look back and go, it affected our basin properly. Now let me cover another subject, and that is incentivized fallow. For years, we had cotton and corn bases and programs that we got paid. We could farm so much, then we had to lay 20, 25% out.
Right.
Yeah, I guess we knew we were saving water, but more importantly, in our ideas at the time, that's what kept us good here, is that was helping save our basin.
Right.
With water.
Right.
So it was those eras. Now we can look back at history. History's wonderful. I love history.
Yeah.
And if you look at this history, you look back and go, whoa, hold it. We did help the valley.
Right.
And we know that it started coming back up. So all that being said, I think there's a chance that we can balance this if we had some incentivized fallow. We imagine if we incentivize the grower so he can make his land payments and take care of overhead and things, and yet afford to lay some out.
Yeah.
It might be the best use of federal funds in these closed water basins across the whole Southwest. They are already doing that in the Hatch Las Cruces under the Elephant Butte system.
Right. Yep.
They have incentivized fallow. Half of it's met by the state and half of it's met by the feds.
Yeah.
There's ways to do this that make sense for tax dollars, that make sense for how to make this all work. So I'm hoping that, I keep saying this, I appreciate you guys giving me the format on this podcast to say that, to say, hey, there's some things that can be done that will really help. And I get pushback from some of the folks in political arenas saying, well, if we incentivize fallow, then what about your John Deere dealerships and your international dealerships and your Fertizonas and that? You know, it always worked out before. There will be ways to work it out, because here's the simple truth, and I want to stamp this in concrete. If we don't, it's not going to be here anyway. If we continue pumping at this level, and to be quite honest, I can't get Farm Bureau to listen to me on that. And they probably don't like me saying this publicly, but even Ms. Griffin, I love Gil to death, but she doesn't realize how serious we really are running out.
You can't sustain what's going on.
We cannot sustain.
We cannot stay this way.
They
no.
say, well, we can't stand the cuts. If we incentivize fallow, it's going to hurt the dealerships. It's going to hurt the Fertizonas. They're going to be hurt anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
So why not be ahead of the curve and take a common sense, reasonable approach and look at this? And I would ask anyone listening to this podcast to pass that on to our legislative folks. And you've heard me say, Ms. Griffin and Senator Dunn, they've done us some good on some things. Nobody is all bad or all good in this thing. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I am trying to say is, at Phoenix, oftentimes, common sense is thrown out the window.
Oh, yeah,
the
I grew
same
up
as
there.
it is at the Capitol. And I'm not meaning the
Yeah.
Phoenix people. I'm talking about
Yeah.
at the Capitol.
Right.
Both the capital of our nation and capital here in Arizona. I mentioned to one of my fellow directors on the governor's council, and he said, "Oh, Curry," when I mentioned about augmentation through irrigation on the Colorado and sprinklers and things, he says, "That's way too common sense for this political arena."
Well, no one ever said you had to have common sense to be a politician.
Well, Ed, let's bring this full circle. Let's talk back about the chilies again, because obviously this is going to affect you very much here in the future. And your farm, like I said, you're a fourth generation farmer, correct? You've been in
Yes.
this valley for a long time growing chilies, and other industries have moved in as well. We talked about the dairy and other agriculture in this area. So standing put without any changes, how do you see this affecting your farm here in the next 10, 20 years?
So I wanted to run this exact question by both bills that were presented, 1520, and I can't remember the name of our bill from the governor because it didn't ever make it to the light of day. I forget the number of it. But if we take and look at the reality of what a bill will do, Farm Bureau right now says that most of Arizona can't take over a 10% cut. So let's look at that. If we don't cut more than 10%, reality, probably not good.
Right.
My farm in 10, 15 years, I'm already in trouble. That's what got my attention was I have these low water use crops of which I can't say a lot about, but I have very low water use crops.
Yeah.
Besides Chile, I had wells I wasn't using, and they were going dry without me using them.
Wow.
That got my attention.
Yeah.
Right.
And I knew we were over pumping this thing. So, Bob, that's a beautiful question. What happens? Well, if we do not augment, and that's one thing that many have, and I'll give Ms. Griffin total credit. She's always talking about augmentation through recharge. I totally agree. But we've also got to come on the other side, and us as growers agree. And most of the larger growers, I won't name names, but I represent a big portion of this basin that agree with me that we're willing to take some cuts. That's why Tuesday at the AMA meeting, one of the larger families in this valley stood up and said, we embrace the 50% cut. It's fine. It's over 50 years. Honestly, I don't know if it's enough soon enough.
Yeah.
That's where the incentivized fallow could really help.
Could move it up a lot quicker.
Could move it up a
move the
lot
timetable
quicker.
up a lot quicker. Yeah.
So does that kind of help explain that?
I think it does. I think even the podcast, what you said, we designed it for is for interesting people, guests on our show, and the things that they're passionate about, the things they have interest in. And this is something that should not just be of interest to you in this area. It should be of interest to everybody. And not just agriculture. We're just talking water in general, very much so agriculture. But every person who lives in Arizona and other places as well, like you said, because other states have had to make this change, should be interested in this and should get educated and be aware of it. And that was part of the reason for doing this today.
Well, because of my position, and I'm on the Arizona Ag Business Water Council as well, and we have a lot of power plant members. Our membership is growing, and we're actually looking for more growers to join us from groundwater basins. I've learned a lot because we have a team of really good attorneys on our board that are part of the board. What I'm learning is that groundwater, what Arizona is doing right now, most of the articles that are written have over 2 million hits on them. We know that. And what that tells us is this is a worldwide problem.
Right.
Nigeria, the Chinese farm some in Nigeria, and they literally struggle with some basins there because they overpumped them and shipped the food to China. I understand. I'm not down on China. I'm just saying there's worldwide groundwater is an issue. Let me give you gave some numbers, Ralph. 77% of clean drinking water comes from the ground around the world, the biggest portion. The surface water tends to be more contaminated. We still have third world countries dumping sewage in. And, you know, I learned something. Patrick Sickle recently said this at a talk of the Ag Roundtable, and I really liked what Patrick said. He said something so visual. He said, I like to give examples of why environmentalists are appreciated. Yes, as a whole, a lot of agriculture, there's animosity between environmentalists and us. The wolf thing is a big deal. Everybody knows, you know, they tried to save the wolf and the rancher, it hurt them, and I don't disagree. But on the other side of the fence, outside of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, they built a whole new area, built big reservoir for water there. They did not legislate that you couldn't dump sewage in it.
Oh.
Today, because the lack of that, because of the beautiful area that it formed, and they started building all kinds of beautiful motels and sites along the edge of it. Where'd they put their sewer?
Right into the reservoir.
Right into the reservoir.
Wow.
So that's something not in our country. But I say that to say that something I have learned about myself. I'm an environmentalist at heart. I really never thought of myself as being an environmentalist until I got into the legal battle of what water is and the political battle of it. And I started recognizing I tend to agree more with the environmentalists than I do the non. And probably some of my fellow farmers don't like to hear me say that. If we're not environmentally conscious, guys, every nation that has succeeded in the history, recorded history of mankind, managed the environment wisely and their environmental resources wisely.
We are stewards. We're supposed to be stewards.
Good word, Rob.
Right.
If we're not good stewards, as a civilization, we will become extinct.
Yeah.
It's just true. Now, we think in this day and age, and we watch Elon Musk send jets and missiles across the sky, and we are all in amaze, and all that. We watch a lot of things. And that's the balance of the left and the right, I guess, is to make sure we don't have environmentalists that completely stop everything, to the other way where we don't have anything. It's all about the balance. That's why I mentioned Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, and maybe people out there disagree. In my view, I remember a different world in those days, that things were more balanced.
They knew how to come together.
They knew how to come together. And
Reasonable discord.
And I just the other day, I kind of lost my cool at the meeting. One group said, "We're coming to the table." And I said, "No, you're not. You appear you are."
Well, they're coming to the table, but all they're doing is sitting there.
Well, worse. It's meretricious.
Oh.
You all know what meretricious is? It means it's beautiful on the outside and absolutely worthless on the inside.
Yeah.
And some of these bills, some of these things that have come forth are strictly meretricious, sometimes down to even hoping that the governor might have to veto a bill so politically it'll help one side or the other.
It's the Vegas facade.
It's such a game. It's such a dance.
Yeah.
Well said, Bob. We have to get down to where we're not playing politics, that we're playing what's good for humanity. And I get it. Just yesterday, I talked to Mr. Bashaw at the Farm Bureau in Phoenix, and I get along good with Phil, and I respect him. And so we had a real honest discussion, because I did accuse them of taking the wrong side on this. I said, I'm agriculture, and you're not taking my side. And so we had a beautiful discussion, and that kind of discussion can produce some good. And my hat's off to Philip. He was very gracious, and it's not the first time we met. Obviously, we met many times. But what we have to be careful of is that either side is not poising or positioning themselves for a greater political value that doesn't have anything to do with what's real.
Right.
And that's where we often end up. I have to tell this, and I probably, it's a particular state organization. Governor Hobbs gave me the honor of sitting down front during the State of the State. So I sat next to a lobbyist that they needed a helicopter for the state. It was very interesting. His comment was, I think I can say this. He's president over the Arizona Highway Patrol, and now he's doing lobby work for him. And he said, in the Highway Patrol, if I stop you, and he was a deputy or a Highway Patrol for years, he said, if I put the radar on you and you're going 55 in a 35 zone, it's black and white. I have it. If there's an accident, I measure the skid marks. We call ambulances, whatever. It's all fact. He said something funny, because he said, when I got into this position, he said, this is the most disingenuous situation I've ever been in. But he said, I learned to play the game. And today we have a new $23 million helicopter that will help save lives. I liked how he said it, disingenuous. He figured out how to work through the disingenuous part to get his helicopter to help us.
Right.
Because if one of our children, one of us has a wreck,
Yeah.
now we have a state-of-the-art helicopter that the old one was 28 years old, had lots of issues, and didn't have the technology that we have now. It was a beautiful vision of how hard it is to get through all the rhetoric.
Well, it's layers.
It's layers. But yet, this thing has got so tough that it's hard to get good, reasonable people to run for public office because they know everything they ever done is going to be aired out.
Yeah.
Who wants to go through that?
Or if they don't take one side or the other, then they're not going to get the support to get there anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess my plea is to the general public, how do we come together? How do we learn, love ye one another? That's really what we're commanded. A carpenter from Galilee said that some 2,000 years ago. Love ye one another. Yep. Put others first. We've lost that. There's so much hate, so much negative energy. It's killing us as a society. And it will if we don't get this under control. Does Ed Curry live a perfect life? Absolutely not. But do I think that if we can get the basis, and by the way, I said this at the House of Representatives about 2 weeks ago, testifying. I used the Galilee and the carpenter and the love you one another. And out of the stands of the members of that committee, one lady come and hugged me in front of everybody and said, thank you for those words. I won't say the other things she said, but it was beautiful. The main thing was she understood what I was getting at, that we have to quit this hating and have to quit this positioning ourselves and being coy. There's an old adage, the truth will set you free, and you guys know where it comes from.
I do.
And it does set us free.
Yeah.
And if we're coy, I guarantee you the evil side will control this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about evil people. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Evil will rule this thing because if we're coy and we're dishonest and we don't come together, the best example I can think of is before I was at the House 3 weeks ago, and then last week at the Senate, and we had a meeting with all of us, and we all got to testify and say some things. The morning before, I got a call from a friend. He works in the chili industry and harvesting. He had lost his 19-year-old son. I'm telling you, this boy was a straight-up FFA member, young man, not locally here, but out of Texas. Good young man. Lost him in a car accident. I wanted to say that so bad. I didn't. And one of my fellow members said later, you should have went ahead and said it, is we get so tied up that we forget. Mother Teresa said, the problem with society is the ills of society because we forget we belong to each other.
Yeah.
In the political arena, there's almost hate to one another. You know what? I don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. If they lose their child, are we going to embrace them and love them through it? Or are we going to stand on the other side and scoff at them for that loss?
Yeah.
I think every one of us know.
Right.
You'd have to be pretty hard to scoff at that. And that's my point in this political arena. We have forgot that we belong to each other. It's more left and right, and there's the abortion issue, and there's the transgender issue, and there's all these issues. I can't tell you how many times I've had to say, because I was in my face, saying, well, they believe in abortion, and I believe that. And I have to say, this is not about all of that. This is about Arizona water. Can't we lay it down for a little bit and
Right.
talk about water?
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I have my beliefs on those issues as well. But the number one issue, we forgot to love each other as in mankind. When we lose that, then we become like a third world country. It's what's made America great, is because we do know that life is important. We don't have cartels running us. We don't have the threat of walking out our door and being killed. At least we didn't. It's getting more and more that way.
Right.
But if we can spread that fact that loving one another and caring for one another, water is life.
Yeah.
It is.
Mini-Wakoni.
And so if we tie that all together to the importance of the heart in this thing, then we don't have red or blue or green or whatever. But when I talk about my friend losing his son, it doesn't matter if he's black, blue, red, or white.
Yeah.
He lost his son.
Right.
All of us can understand that he needs help. He needs encouragement. That's grief none of us want to have. So that's, I just try to tie this in that for me, this whole experience has been eye-opening to how much hate we have, even in our Arizona politics. And I got to know Rusty Bowers personally. And Rusty experienced a major problem some 4 years ago. He was Speaker of the House, and he disagreed with some things. And boy, he paid the price. And that's sad. We shouldn't have to pay the price for speaking against some of our fellow members in life. It's members in life. It's not members of the Republican Party, members of the Democratic Party. It's about life. So when I say this water issue is about life, it is. And the only way we're going to whip it, love ye one another.
Got to come together on it.
Got to come together.
And I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up, Ed. I think on that when you're talking about the water issue. Come together, love one another, set your hate aside or set your hidden agendas aside and understand this is the issue that affects all of us. Yeah. And it's something we all need to deal with it, regardless of what walk of life you come from. We all need it. They said water is life.
I listened to podcasts from Father Greg Boyle. He developed Homeboy Industries in L.A. working with gang kids.
Right.
It changed his whole theology. Obviously, he's a Catholic priest. I'm not Catholic, but I listen to him regular because he learned that the only way he could overcome the hate was through love.
Yeah.
And he, if I can end with a little quick story of his, because it makes such a good point. He tells of a young boy that had come to the States from El Salvador illegally at 1.5 years old. He was an infant, but his parents came. They were all illegal. He got into gangs. He got into terrible trouble. Now, Father Boyle's telling this story from the finished side, so let's take it from the finished side. So the boy is 26 or 7 years old. He's absolutely been into drugs. He said he was literally one of the meanest fellas he had ever worked with. Now he's talking to him, and he's one of the kindest people, and he joined in helping. And he says, what changed you? Well, he got caught for some of his terrible activities, went to prison. There they figured out he was illegal. They deported him. When they deported him, he ends up in El Salvador. It takes him months to get back, and it takes him quite a while just to get across into the Mexican border. He doesn't know Spanish because he's been over here, and yet he got sent to his home country. And so he's trying to illegally get out of there to get back home.
Right.
Several days into it, he gets beaten and robbed in Mexico. Heals up, moves on. The next time, he gets beaten and robbed, and they strip him naked. And when Father Boyle tells us, it's beautiful, because this is the young man's word to him. You want to know why I'm kind? He said, as I was beaten and wounded, he had all kinds of real horrible, ugly tattoos all over his body. And he kind of indicated that might have been why they stripped him. But the bottom line is, he's naked. And he's crawling into a Mexican village, naked. And he said, as I crawled into that village, mothers sent their kiddos out with clothes. I can't say this without emotion. By the time he got to the center of town, he told Father Boal, they clothed me with kindness. I will never be mean again. That's what we got to get to. We got to get to where we understand that we're all naked.
That's a powerful message.
Wow.
It's powerful.
It really is. Wow. Ed, it's always a pleasure to have you on the podcast. And I know we have certain ideas what we want to talk about, but the beauty of this podcast is we don't know where it's going to take us and what journey we're going to go on. And it's been a beautiful journey with you today.
It has.
Oh, thank you. The last thing I should say that I completely forgot to say is this. In this water legislation and our rural working groups,
yes,
each basin is so different. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And yet one of the issues is we got the San Simon Buoy Basin right across the mountain from us. Everybody thinks it's part of our closed Wilcox Basin. It's not.
It's not.
It's actually a sub-basin to the Globe Safford area because it drains into the Gila River. Because of that, they've been left out. So guess we have at least an AMA to stop any further growth. And I back the governor to do it, even though it's going to personally hurt me, because the bad thing about an AMA is it gives historical values use of water. So those of us that used a lot less water trying to save the valley actually get penalized the most.
Right.
And I don't mean me specifically, but yet we do have some of that. But I have friends that switched to cotton, switched to a lot of things. Now they're going to give a much less historical value than the ones that have abused and double cropped the whole bunch and done a lot of things that abuse the water. So I'll close with this. Remember that even the San Simon Buoy Basin, and what made me think of this is talking about the young man naked, because I used that example at the legislature. I said, we have left San Simon and Buoy boys standing in their underwear because corporate America can keep growing and buying land over there and drilling. There's not enough water the way it is, but there is absolutely zero protection.
Yeah,
in the governor's bill, we put it in. I'm hoping we can, as we negotiate the bill now, 1520 with the Republicans, I hope we can get it in. But there are several basins around the state in similar situations. So that's one thing I didn't cover in this. So thank you for letting me finish that off.
You're welcome. That's an important point. We want to make sure to include all of them in this to protect all the areas in our area. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Bob Dahlstrom, with my partner in crime, Ralph Score here. And we've been sitting down today once again with Mr. Ed Curry. Ed, thank you again for being a guest on our podcast for the second time.
The Godfather of Chile.
We appreciate having you.
Remember, if you wake up in bed, it's not going to be a horse head. It's going to be a big hot chili right under your pillow.
I don't see a downside to that at all, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.